This is the Wait For It podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wait For It podcast. I am your co-host, Phil Barrera, aka Phil the Filipino.
And I'm your other co-host, Mr. Eric Almighty. And today, for this edition of Late to the Party, really excited to talk about Pretty Woman, a film that, yes, is over 30 years old, is iconic, and why haven't we watched it? We really couldn't tell you. But Phil, I'm glad that we sprung this up together. I sprung it on you, and we're now talking about it here today.
Yeah, it's probably the 90s rom-com next to, well, You Got Mail probably came out like in the early 2000s, huh? So like maybe right around 2000. So it's like the rom-com. So what better way to start off February than with a classic? And yeah, it was a really random suggestion, but one that I certainly welcomed because my only familiarity really with Pretty Woman, of course, being the song, but also there is that like really funny segment in The Office where they kind of recreate that with Dwight Schrute. So I knew the premise of the film. I've seen plenty of the iconic moments like on social media, but never sat down and watched it. Like you said, Eric, I mean, why that never happened? Who knows? I mean, growing up in the 90s, it's not like I ever would have told my parents, hey, can I go see Pretty Woman? What was this movie even rated? It was probably PG-13, huh? Was that? No, rated R. It is rated R. So, you know, it's not necessarily a movie I would have seen as a child. And then as I became an adult, I never really circled it until now. But very excited to get to this conversation and talk about how we felt about it. And interested to see if anybody else, like from our audience, has seen it recently, because of how it is aged, whether that be in a good way or a bad way, and I think all of that will come up here today.
Definitely part of the conversation. Phil did not know, I've seen the movie, should know this, did not know it was rated R. What made this movie rated R? I know it was a different time, but very curious, something we will definitely get into. And this is my spot to let you guys know, because this movie came out in 1990, this is a movie we are going to talk about extremely freely. So if you have not watched Pretty Woman, I am hoping that both of us will have pretty high praise, but I can tell you it's at least a recommendation from me, and I'm excited to talk about it here. So go check that out, come back, and then listen to the rest of this episode, because I definitely think some of this charm that resonates over all of these years is not exactly knowing where the story is going. It's not an overcomplicated story or plot, and I think the charisma from the characters, specifically Julia Roberts, really carries the film's momentum forward. We're going to get into all of that here today, but again, that is your warning. We are going to speak spoilers for Pretty Woman.
Yeah, you can check it out on Max, so if you are subscribed there, that's where you can find it. If you want to find any other episodes of the Wait For It podcast or our social media pages, make sure you stick around to the very end of the episode. We will go over all of that in a little bit. But let's get to the Letterbox'd synopsis of Pretty Woman, released in 1990, directed by Gere Marshall, starring Richard Gere and Julia Roberts. While on a business trip in Los Angeles, Edward Lewis, a millionaire entrepreneur who makes a living buying and breaking up companies, picks up a prostitute, Vivian, while asking for directions. After Edward hires Vivian to stay with him for the weekend, to accompany him to a few social events, and the two get closer, only to discover there are significant hurdles to overcome as they try to bridge the gap between their very different worlds. So, yes, let's start with those leads there, Eric. Richard Gere, 90s heartthrob, right? You can certainly understand why he would be very, very popular around this time. And Julia Roberts, America's sweetheart, right? Erin Brockovich, Pretty Woman. She is iconic, and I know a lot of people regard this as one of her best performances. Certainly see why. Vivian is very lovable, even if there are issues with her character. Again, now 35 years later. That's why it's going to be very interesting to talk about this movie, because I think a lot of people, if they were to watch it now, could get bogged down in a lot of the issues socially when it comes to this film. But when you do just kind of peel it back and watch it from the lens of, in that time period, not giving it any excuses, but just watch the performances and watch how charming everybody are, I really find it hard to believe that anybody would really have a bad time watching Pretty Woman, no matter when it is.
No, I agree. I have been seeing clips of this on TikTok, which is what led me to ask you, do you want to watch it? And I'm going to be honest with you, Phil. Just from the clips I was seeing, I was like, oh, I think I might really enjoy this movie. And I think despite the questionable premise, obviously, it's a millionaire and a hooker. Like, it's such a weird power dynamic and all of those things. Like, there's so many things, right, that you can get into. But the characters and the performances that are portrayed of those characters, I think, is what really makes this very unique and very iconic. I can understand why people love this movie and why it is really, I wouldn't say spawned the genre of, rom-coms necessarily, but it is absolutely up there when people bring them up. And maybe not so much into the comedicness, like it is funny. The romance, though, it just works. And that is a testament to both Richard Gere and specifically Julia Roberts. I did not indulge myself into prime Julia Roberts. I always knew she was good. In the same way, a Meryl Streep is very fantastic, but I don't watch Meryl Streep movies. Julia Roberts was kind of in that same vein, and that might have to change because prime Julia Roberts is something else.
Yeah, another icon where, adults of that time, of course, idolized and sought after, their very own Julia Roberts. And you can certainly see why. I mean, this is an iconic look. It's got the iconic scenes, big, what is it? Big mistake. Huge. Like, that's an iconic line, iconic presentation of a character as well. And she certainly carries, as good as Richard Gere is. I mean, we are 3 or 4 decisions away from American Psycho. So it's really great that Julia Roberts is here, because if you change the music to this a little bit, totally different movie. But great choice of, obviously, the Pretty Woman song. But the King of Wishful Thinking, can we talk about how amazing that song is? So when it popped up, I was like, yeah, we are cooking now.
Oh, dude, it must have been love. Like, yeah. I think one of the things that adds to the aura of this film, and again, you hear it's a really good movie, but you don't know what to expect. Phil, the soundtrack gave me the same soft landing of enjoying the time that this movie was based in, the same way we felt with Top Gun, the original Top Gun. And I very much, not nearly as funny as some of the music in Top Gun, Great Balls of Fire, but I will say that the music here was a nice addition to the atmosphere of how this was filmed. The way the movie is shot, I mean, it's got that grungy 1990s, like, literally filmography that you can expect from a director like Gary Marshall, who also did films like The Princess Diaries. So that should kind of let you know several people from The Princess Diaries making an appearance here. So you can kind of see the connection. But I definitely really liked what this movie was all about, and I think it's a product of its era, and that's such a compliment on my end.
Yeah, I don't think, other than Princess Diaries, of course, which is a classic, I don't think this is a filmography we're going to go down, because, Eric, there are 2 movies on here that you absolutely, 2 styles of movies that you absolutely hate, in Valentine's Day and New Year's Eve. Runaway Bride, they also reconnected, and I guarantee you, they were like, oh, it's been 9 years, people love Pretty Woman, let's just bring those 2 back and we'll cook. And that does not have a very good Letterboxd score, 2.9. It's not terrible, but it's like not good.
He also did Mother's Day, so he was
Mother's Day is another one. Yeah.
Listen, his last 3 films, I believe, as a director, did not go well, and that's what But that kind of strengthens my argument about a product of its era, because like making a movie like that today does not work. It does not work, and I think understanding the time frame that it came, the music helped kind of reinforce that. It just works. That's kind of, again, going to be my overall statement. Like, I understand there are a lot of things watching back for the first time working against this film. Those things just didn't matter at the end of the day. That being said, Phil, there are fans of Runaway Bride. I've had people recommend that to me before. No interest in seeing it, but
I didn't know he directed Overboard.
I didn't either.
Yeah,
and,
that's another problematic movie, but still, I mean, when you strip it down, it's pretty fun. Goldie Hawn, Kurt Russell, come on.
Pretty fun. I think, again, when we try to dissect It Just Works and like what exactly that is, Julia Roberts infectious, right? I mean, again, I'm going to be gushing about her the whole episode, as we should. But Richard Gere is like a creep in the most effective and romantic way possible. Like, it's absolutely effective. He's got that undeniable charm. And
this isn't about Richard Gere in my face. I just want to say rest in peace to Gary Marshall, because he passed away in 2016. So We're not trying to speak ill of Gary Marshall. We just spent like 5 minutes
shitting on his career.
Filmography, and then I saw off to the side on Letterboxd.
R.I.P. You know, it's unfortunate.
We love Pretty Woman, Gary.
We love Pretty Woman. We're going to talk about how much we love Pretty Woman.
Anyway, Richard Gere.
Creep. Richard Gere is an effective creep. And yes, being a millionaire, picking up a hooker, and like the premise itself is dirty, right? But there are layers underneath that character. And if there is a critique about this film, I know we talk about likes and then critiques after. I don't really have a lot of critiques. I think you might have more than I do. One of my main critiques is that I wish we kind of peeled back the layers of his character a little bit more to get some of the buy-in for, you know, decisions that are made, things that are said. But I do think the layers are there, and I think this may be a more complex character than just I'm rich, I have money. And I think they tried to show that on screen. Whether or not that was always effective is definitely up for debate, but I think that's what added to Richard Gere's charm. So as much as I think Julia Roberts is the clear star and deserves all the flowers for the success of this movie, because she drives the film every single time she is on screen, Richard Gere, I think, is a great supporting cast member there to really lift her up as that 1A, 1B in this romantic comedy.
Yeah, I definitely have exactly what you were talking about in terms of some decisions I wish they had made differently when it came to Edward. So we'll talk about that in a moment. I do want to make sure that we highlight Mr. Thompson, of course, the manager of the hotel, played by Hector Elizondo. Man, just watching their relationship kind of build over the course of the film and seeing how proud he was, and how he also essentially acts as the liaison between the two of them, right? He's basically the matchmaker, does a fantastic job. It's a really, really kind of sweet side story to see how kind of the hotel staff starts accepting her and opening up to her, when at first they like really looked at her in disgust. Now, again, how we got there, a little icky, but still, it's just a very feel-good moment. So I wanted to make sure that we pointed him out. I feel bad for Jason Alexander, because like in every 90s and 2000s film, he's just the grossest person. And it's we talked about being typecast with a guest that we have at the end of the month, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's just Jason Alexander's face and build. That's just who he was, unfortunately. Even though he's really good in these roles, it's just he just plays them a little bit too well. And you're like, man, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, again, played his character well. That's ultimately what happened here. But you know, again, you mentioned the big ones, but everyone else that kind of had a little part to play here and there, again, they did very well, very well. There's not much of a supporting cast here, in the sense that, again, this movie is driven by our two lead characters, and everyone else just kind of fits a very small but specific role to play in the story. And Phil, the story, again, is not complicated in any way. It's about these two spending basically a week together, and how that turns from basically a mistake to, you know, love, right? That's what you're signing up for here with this film. And while there are some things here and there that you know, you can nitpick, and I think we'll probably maybe switch to that here for specifics, just a really, really good film that I think deserves the hype that comes around it. So Phil, I'll kind of throw it to you because I think I'll fill in a lot of smaller nitpicks as we go through yours. What were some of those decisions and things that you were kind of alluding to that you wish the movie or the characters had done a little differently?
Yeah, to circle back to Edward, like you said, there is a discussion when he's talking to her about why weren't you there when your dad passed away? Why hadn't you spoken in 14 years? Like, if you explore that, then you have a little bit more of a understanding of why he goes back on his decision with the Morses, right? With Mr. Morse. You wonder, because even though he makes that decision, I think the argument can be made. You still don't really, I don't really know if he's really changed. I think that he's still very much entrenched in his specific lifestyle, and I think there definitely is change for sure. But again, we didn't spend enough time there to feel that that decision was warranted, as good as it feels at the end, and we're happy he has done that. Maybe because the movie's already over 2 hours long. So I don't know that you commit any more time, especially when it comes to a romantic comedy. Over 2 hours, I think, is probably your limit. So what do you adjust in terms of trying to make that character a little bit more fleshed out, other than, like you said, he's got money and he's able to make these grand gestures. So I think there was an opportunity to make Edward a more fleshed out character. But again, in 1990, no one cares about that. These are things we want now. If they were to make a Pretty Woman now, which, God, please don't remake Pretty Woman. We're a very forward-thinking and progressive podcast. Don't make a woke crap a Pretty Woman movie, for the love of God.
We don't want it.
We have a Nora, and we love a Nora, and that already has its issues as well. So
yes,
please don't. Please
also
don't.
Fantastic.
Also excellent film.
Excellent film.
Justice for Mikey.
We're really big fan of hooker films. So,
okay. So, yeah. So again, 30 years ago, no one cared about that. They just want to know that someone's going to save her. And also in a little bit of a twist, in terms of movies at that time, she saves him, quote unquote, as well. So that's something that I'd like to see now. But again, 35 years ago, nobody was worried about that.
Yeah, that's completely fair. This is where having like a family member show up for like 10 minutes would have helped. And given that other side that he's like not showing, if you wanted to reveal it in that way, that's such a traditional rom-com thing to happen. They end up at his parents' house. They end up in the vicinity of the family. That's how typical rom-coms work. In this situation, I can easily see, a scene being added here, not necessarily 15, 20, 30 minutes more of screen time to flesh that out. And that's where the gripes are a little bit smaller. Again, I would have liked to see a little bit more towards the build of that ending. I could see people not liking that ending, essentially being the, knight in shining armor play on things. But again, I just think these are two very flawed people. At one point he's like very aggressively, I might add, says, we're very similar. We both screw people for money, which, first off, fucked up thing to say. Super fucked up. But it did actually fit like the actual comparisons of these are two flawed characters that have stumbled upon each other, that almost fill each other's needs. And that's essentially, as a flawed person, what sometimes you tend to do. And I don't know, maybe I was looking too deep into the movie for what it was, but those type of connections I thought were really, really crucial to me buying into what the story was, as far-fetched as it was. So yeah, that's really my only main gripes with the film. I don't have too much, and again, I hate to just summarize my feelings as this is one of my favorite performances by an actress, but yeah, Julia Roberts is the powerhouse that I would recommend you see this movie for. I mean, it just, again, cannot stress that enough, how much I enjoyed that performance, and I think that'll be reflected in my score.
Yeah, she is excellent, so definitely worth that time there. Other things, again, that are issues in 2025 that are not back then. Obviously, it's a very materialistic movie. It's not the best representation of sex work. There is a little bit of a I'm better than these other sex workers type of thing with Vivian, but again, if you're gonna watch it through 2025 lens, then you might be more critical of this movie than it deserves to be. So were mistakes made back then that could have been changed? Absolutely. So many of these, Eric, how many of these movies have we watched now that we're like, I can do that now, but it didn't necessarily detract from us having a really good time. So yeah, I think a lot of those things that people have issues with that were brought up on Letterboxd or on YouTube are valid, but also all we can really do now is kind of look at, hey, what worked in Pretty Woman and what could be adjusted for things going forward. So I think a lot of people, to kind of pivot to Anora, because we haven't really talked openly on, we talked obviously in our Letterboxd review, like a lot of people were talking about, one of the complaints was, we don't really know anything about her, about Anora's, like, what does she want out of life? What are her goals and ambitions? And I like totally disagree with that, because her goals are ambitions are kind of like what got her into this lifestyle. Like, it's very surface level, and that shows in the like devastating climax of that movie, right? So like I think that when it comes to when movies about this type of work and this type of lifestyle are really tricky, because there's not really one base storyline you can follow for all of them, right? Because we don't really have any idea.
I agree. I think some things are open to interpretation. And again, depending on your interpretation and your personal feelings, those things can absolutely make you love or hate a movie more. And that's why when we get to things like scores, Phil, again, before we get to our scores, I think it'll be nice to see what the consensus is across, Rotten Tomatoes and Letterboxd. But I think that will be prevalent in anyone's scores, that determination of, is this something that I can relate with? How did I interpret what the film was giving me? I think this is a good example of that, because on the surface, it's pretty cut and dry. But again, I felt like I was identifying things on a deeper level that I resonated with, or I connected with, and I understood. And again, all of that delivered with great performances that I found engaging really, really helped me put the dots together and line up to a score that I felt comfortable with.
Yeah, for sure. So let's transition into that here and see what the consensus is when it comes to scores. On IMDb, it does have a 7.1. So again, IMDb seems to be like the harshest out of everybody, which is really interesting in terms of just like movie scores in general. 64% tomato meter score on Rotten Tomatoes, and a 68% popcorn meter user score. So again, wondering how much of that is visiting the film in a more with a more recent viewpoint. Like some of these reviews I see are from 2023, 2022, so that of course is going to affect it. And then over on Letterboxd, it is currently sporting an average of 3.7. Really, really solid. I ultimately ended up, Eric, giving this a 4 out of 5. Really, really enjoyed it. In terms of rom-coms, it is certainly up there in terms of something that, in terms of, all the other rom-coms we've watched on this, but also just romantic comedies in general. Julia Roberts, like we already mentioned, is a complete powerhouse. Richard Gere is creepy, but again, we talked about this with our guest at the end of the month. That was just kind of like the archetype for the male lead in a rom-com in the 90s. He was just kind of a creep that didn't go away, and he was either just really rich or like really artistic, right? That was the thing. They were either really creative or really rich. That was the whole thing. So this worked for me. Would it work now? No. But as far as like how it made me feel, I had a really good time with a lot of the relationships, and honestly, again, those relationships between Vivian and some of those workers in the hotel, I really, really enjoyed. So yeah, 4 to 5 on my end.
Yeah, not a bad score. I figured it was going to be positive at the very least, so maybe even higher than I thought you would give the film. Phil, I don't know if you've looked at my Letterboxd score or its placement on the late to the party list that I have there. I gave Pretty Woman a 4.5. I was intoxicated by the performances in this film. I would absolutely watch this again. I would absolutely put this on for somebody who said they had never seen it before, and I would go out of my way to recommend it. I don't think this movie's for everyone. And again, the problems absolutely exist. If anything, that's what stops this from being a 5, because there absolutely are issues present. both in how I would have done the storytelling if I was in their shoes, in the director's shoes, and also looking back, there are a couple things that don't age exceptionally well. But yeah, I like this movie. No, I love this movie. I love this movie quite a bit. And Phil, as far as where it ranks in my list, it's number 3. I've only given 3 things a 4.5 on Late to the Party. I understand. It is between my top 5 are currently, I'll just read those off, is Chernobyl, Interstellar, Pretty Woman, Paddington 2, Top Gun Maverick. So do with that what you will.
Well, I mean, it's still ranked very high on my list. I mean, we've done 32 of these. I think 33 because there's a show on here that's maybe not in Letterboxd, but it's 13 for me. So it's right behind. It's actually between 2 Indiana Jones movies. So Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which is also a 4, and then Temple of Doom, which I have at a 3.5. So I mean, that's really good company. It's right there with those 2 Indiana Jones films. Also, like The Whale and Mitchell's versus the Machines in the same row. So yeah, still high for me. And remember, I've got movies like Goodfellas and Big Sick and Klaus in my top 6. So a little bit of a difference there, but yeah, definitely enjoyed it and certainly understand why it kind of sits on the mountaintop of some of the best romantic comedies. Although I will say this Vanity Fair article from 2023, it's not on here, and they did a top 42. And it's not on this list, so
no, that's an actual crime,
which is interesting. So
I'll name some movies, Phil. That's actually a great segue.
Yeah.
We will do our more like this, which I have taken the feedback since the last episode, and I am now using both IMDb and Letterboxd recommendations for more like this or similar films. Phil, I'm gonna name a couple that I know for sure you have seen. Though I'm aware this might be a genre I've seen more than you. Like, I've definitely watched a lot of these when I was younger. Rom-coms were one of those things that was always on. And I just, like, whenever you'd flip on the channel to TNT or TBS or some shit like that.
Yeah.
That's what would be on. And I would watch, like, 70 to 80% of it, if not the whole thing. So, that being said, I've got a couple in mind that I'm pretty sure you've seen. But just let me know if you haven't. So, starting off from IMDb, would you rather watch Pretty Woman or How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? Yeah, this is going to get hard.
I got to go with How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I love Matthew McConaughey and Kate Hudson.
It's crazy.
So, I got to go with that. Yeah.
Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or 10 Things I Hate About You?
Pretty Woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or 13 Going on 30?
13 Going on 30. It's a fun movie.
Okay. Wow. Shocker.
It's a fun film.
Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or The Wedding Planner?
Oh,
I put another
Pretty
Matthew
Woman.
McConaughey.
Yeah, no J-Lo. Nothing J-Lo. Anything with J-Lo in it, just don't ask me.
So Made in Manhattan here?
Nope.
No?
Nope. She just put out the same movie for 8 years and then did Atlas. So, no J-Lo.
Tough. Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or The Devil Wears Prada?
Devil Wears Prada.
I know.
9 times out of 10. Devil Wears Prada. It's one of my... God, I love that movie. I can't.
Probably going to watch it. That's your Pretty Woman.
Yeah. Oh, my God. I love The Devil Wears Prada. I haven't watched it in a little bit. I should watch it soon.
Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or The Notebook?
Pretty Woman. I won't sob if I watch. The Notebook's kind of messed up, too, but I think Pretty Woman.
Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or You've Got Mail?
Meg Ryan versus Julia Roberts is a pretty crazy. I'm gonna go You've Got Mail because Tom Hanks over Richard Gere for sure.
I love Tom Hanks. Yeah, in that. So he's just an asshole. Really.
Yeah. No, for sure. That also did come out in '99. So that was the AOL days. So yeah.
Yep. Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or Hitch?
Hitch.
Yeah.
Pretty Woman's a better movie, but we love Hitch, man.
We love Hitch a little bit too much.
We love Hitch. Even Prime, Eva Mendes and Will Smith, and then the good version of Kevin James. It's got like everything. It's a great movie.
Maybe last one. I don't know if you've seen this, and I'm gonna throw a couple other honorable mentions after this. Would you rather watch Pretty Woman or Crazy Stupid Love?
I haven't seen Crazy Stupid Love.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah, were we gonna do that?
No, that's amazing. I'm gonna put that on the list, and we're gonna watch it.
Crazy Stupid Love. Which one's Crazy Stupid Love?
With Steve Carell.
Oh yeah, no. I've seen Crazy Stupid Love.
Yeah, I was like,
Crazy
okay.
Stupid Love. Yeah, no, it's Crazy Stupid Love. I've given that a 4.5 on Letterboxd. So
I
Crazy
need
Stupid
to.
Love.
I need to update my Letterboxd and do it. Yeah, it's a fantastic film. Okay.
Yeah, Crazy Stupid Love.
Honorable mentions, that was around the cusp of movies I wasn't sure you had seen or not. Honorable mentions, since we're talking about movies that, on that list of variety that didn't make the cut. Again, there's so many of these types of films. Some of them were, I never watched Notting Hill, another Julia Roberts film.
Me neither.
Kate and Leopold with Hugh Jackman and Meg Ryan. The Holiday, never seen The Holiday.
Isn't The Holiday another one of those ensemble movies?
Yeah, with Jude Law, Cameron Diaz, Kate
Love
Winslet.
Actually is what we were talking about watching, right?
Love Actually is the other one that we almost did this month. There was also, I wanted to ask you this. Have you seen When Harry Met Sally?
I have not. That's Hugh Grant?
No, that is Meg Ryan and Billy. It's right there. God damn it. One second. That's crazy. Billy Crystal.
Oh, okay. No, I haven't
Insane.
seen it.
I'm going to put that on our list because that is something that someone here, if you're listening, is going to give us shit for, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that is
Wedding Crashers.
Top tier. No, Wedding Crashers actually did not pop up on this list.
I'm on the Letterboxd list.
There was What Women Want with Mel Gibson, where he could read people's minds with Helen Hunt.
Yeah, no, creepy.
Yeah, these are the type of rom-coms I've watched. I've seen The Ugly Truth with Gerard Butler and what's her name? Katherine Heigl. Yeah, we're gonna start getting into that
Knocked
territory.
Speaking of Katherine Heigl.
Yeah, Knocked Up. Yeah,
50 First Dates.
Oh, Upgraded is on here. I only know that you've seen that. Yeah,
it's all right.
That's bad.
She's good. I can't remember the name of the lead, but she's fine. But yeah.
I think I've seen Sleepless in Seattle. I'm pretty
have
sure I have. Failure to Launch, another Matthew McConaughey film. Oh, Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That movie slaps. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, that's about it. And Anora's at the bottom of this list. Crazy. Crazy. I don't know how that wouldn't be higher.
Well, Anora's not really a rom-com.
Pretty similar.
I think it's like a romantic drama.
Pretty Woman.
It is hilarious, though.
We didn't really talk about it at all. Pretty Woman was really an R rating for what?
There's a titty, like for a second.
Is there?
Yeah, and then there's one fuck. So I guarantee it's probably because of the subject matter. Again, like 1990, like it was such a taboo thing. Like sex work now is much more obviously accepted. Obviously, Anora, 100% understand why that's rated R, but like maybe back in that time.
No, it's definitely for the language. Yeah, fuck is said about 4 times. It says.
Really? I only remember
that's what the
one.
parents' guide says. So just.
I only remember one,
moderate,
and I watched it today. So
yeah.
But it is also strange that he just tells everybody in the lobby to leave so he could bang Julia Roberts in the hotel lobby on the piano.
Listen,
that's crazy work.
That is pretty crazy, but also, yeah.
But that's an expensive piano, man.
Oh, it does say someone has lingerie you can see a nipple through. Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine.
Yeah. You didn't watch Anyone But You, right? You didn't watch that Glenn Powell one, the one with Sydney Sweeney.
Oh, no, I haven't yet.
Okay.
That's still on my list of Glenn Powell movies to watch.
Yeah.
I know you were really high on it, though. But yeah, that's our episode, guys. We're actually on the episode. It's like we're in the Patreon post-show.
Yeah, we're still here. We're
chatting it up.
still
Sorry.
here.
We'll Patreon, that's yours.
All I know,
and we'll talk about you guys in a minute. But yeah, that's all I really had.
Yeah, all I know is that Richard Gere, as a businessman, probably has a lot higher standards than Nico Harrison, general manager of the Dallas Mavericks. So at least he is a better person than Nico Harrison is in real life.
Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't crash out. We're almost done. And then you can crash out in private. Please take us home so you can rest after the news. that you've had to face in the last 24 hours from recording. I'm so sorry. Again, my condolences.
Well, if you enjoyed this podcast much more than how the Dallas Mavericks are run, you can find the Linktree link in the show notes of this episode for all of our content. You can follow us over on social media. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok. You can find us on our Discord channel. We also stream every other week over on Twitch. And you can find us content on our YouTube page as well. If you want to support the show, you can head on over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and give us a 5-star review. It is one of the best ways to support the show for free, and it is very, very beneficial. And you can tag us. Let us know that you're listening. Let other people know that you're listening and enjoying this, our content. All of that goes a very long way. So follow us all over there and unfollow the Dallas Mavericks. But if you want to know how you can get more content from the Wait For It podcast, like some behind-the-scenes stuff, Eric will let you know all about that.
Yeah, so the best way that you can support us, in addition to everything that you can for free, is going to be Patreon. And for that additional financial support, you can get extra benefits over there, such as access to episodes early, including early access and behind the scenes like this one. This episode will have all of that in addition to all of our lineup, so make sure to check that out. We'd very much appreciate it. But if you're not able to do that, that is okay. All of the free stuff is perfectly fine. Shout out to everyone supporting us currently on Patreon, from Briar to Stefan to T3 Kato, Corey from The World Is My Burrito, and Vintage and Bridget from Retro AV Rewind. We really appreciate all of you for your support this past month. And with that all being said, my name is Mr. Eric Almighty. That is my co-host, Phil the Filipino. Please don't forget, we release new episodes every Wednesday with bonus content on platforms like Twitch and TikTok. And all you got to do is wait for it.
This is the Wait For It podcast.